My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sangrat, Guru Piran Neo, fellow Jnanis. I hope all of you are doing well. Um, I'm going to continue with Swamiji's teachings and how one applies to these teachings and philosophy in every facet of our lives. And I'm going to cover part 4. Um, the last few classes I've been saying how this meditation is so important. Uh, there are many people that practice different types of meditation. Um, but Mahan's meditational practice is these 3 stages of Kundalini meditation, where the first stage you learn how to focus, and that has an impact on our intellect. And then second stage is how to bring the energy down to keep the overall body and the well-being well. And then the third stage is how it's brought up to the top, where one feels a kind of a blissful and universal experience, a connected state. And that over time helps you to discover your own spiritual compass, which helps you to understand God, the creation, the creator, and all creations. You also then have a pretty good understanding of the self. It's a spiritual pursuit. And how do you understand both from a religious perspective of God and the self is through the mind slowly evolves to pursue rational thought, logic, and reason, and also takes a very scientific, unbiased approach to this experience to realize that reality. And I spoke about how this universal mindset or this spiritual compass, or what I call the divine universal adapter. Why do I use the thing? Because you can connect to every stages of your life. And I spoke about student life, how one practices this to, as a student, you are in this connected state, in this expanded state that you do really well in your studies. The same thing I also spoke about the last week about how after you finish your student life, when you start practicing this meditation, how it helps you to build a very successful, enriching professional life. Today, I want to speak about the stages of our lives where we still have our professional life, but we also sometimes take the householder life where some of us have family, children, and other responsibilities. I call it the maturity stage, and how this meditational sadhana, the meditational practices also helps us to become more and more steady. Now, that spiritual compass helps us to identify what is really important in our lives. What is it that gives us greater peace and tranquility? It also helps guide us to the path of, quietude and the path of continuous inspiration and, continuous wanting to know the truth. Doesn't matter which stage of our lives, that mind gravitates to this. So today I'm going to speak about the state where householder and a more mature state, how as you practice this meditation, it helps us. And a few things that we start doing, unlike many, many people who do not practice meditation and sometimes, don't see the purpose of their lives in a kind of a divine and enlightened way. So here it is. So I spoke about how this meditational sadhana of Mahan, you know, says that how you unify our professional life and our day-to-day life with our divine, with our spiritual life. And I spoke about how this practice gives you a soul enriching professional life and a householder life. I spoke about professional life last week. So I'm going to use that same concept to tell you that soul enriching family life, right? So what does that mean? It means that, we although we are working, we have a family life, we treat our family life in a divine way, in a spiritual way, and having a sustainable mindset, because in a family you still have a lot of challenges because you're balancing between your professional life as you're getting mature. Maybe there are more commitments in the office, Maybe you're taking on more senior leadership roles, but also you have commitments at home. How do you balance the two? And this is what meditation helps us. Allows you to have a kind of a spiritual approach, but also spiritual and seamlessly integrated in every facet of our lives. So the spiritual realm is embedded into our professional life, into into our family life, and we don't get confused. We don't get there's no disharmony between the two. Right? Sometimes people, they're working, they have a lot of commitment, a lot of challenges, they bring it home, and that challenges are brought back home. So here, when we practice meditation, we see that you can also have a what I call soul enriching professional life, but also a family life. We're able to create a lot of opportunities in the office, but also in our own homes. As you're maturing, you'll see that you're able to create, wealth, be able to provide resources for families. So you're creating value for our own family members. We will see that also as we practice this meditation, you have uplifting values, which you bring in your office environment, but also in your home environment. You don't criticize people too hard, your workers or your bosses or your even family, right? So you have, there are challenges, but you give them soothing words, encouraging words, inspirational words. You uplift their whole morale. And that's what happens when you start practicing this meditation. You're always positive, you're always kind, you're always gentle, right? So, and this is how you build leadership in your professional life and also in your family life. I always say that it nurtures the CEO quality. It's not chief executive officer, but chief enlightenment officer. You become enlightened and illumined in your professional life, but also in your family life. You know how to manage, how to not take people for granted, particularly family members, how husband, wife, children. You respect them. And I spoke about how this Mahan's meditation method helps nurture these seven values of gratitude and gracefulness in your profession, in your work, and also in your family. Having that patience, perseverance, and persistence, mastering the knowledge of the different dynamics in the office and the dynamics in family, you know, dynamics among the different family members, right? You acquire that, you have that attunement. You become aware of the self and having that infinite possibility to resolve challenges in your professional life and family life. You also do have that humility, that, okay, I may not know everything, but I am willing to learn. And that gives us that learning mindset that helps us to have that agility of the mind. And we treat both our professional and our family life with a sense of respect, reverence, and nobility. So you see that this practice of Mahan helps one bridge two between spiritual, professional, and family life. So this is what I spoke about the last time, the continuum of every human being from birth right up to death. And uh, we see that, of course, most people today are living longer. So what is it that we need to do to enjoy this journey called life? And for me, this universal adapter which Mahan taught and showed us and helped us experience and realize it helps us to nurture a divinizing learning mindset. And when we do that, you see that in every stages of our lives, we live a spectacular life. What do I mean by that? You become more enlightened and complete. In our language, you say paripurnam, a complete life. So here it is that, I spoke about the last time of how the two satsang ago, I spoke about how as a student. Last satsang, I spoke about how a spiritual life, from the ages of 20 to 40, you're really working hard, got all your education, right? It helps us to get the education and knowledge, teaches us to balance between what we learn, the professional life, and also our spiritual life. You acquire the dharmic knowledge, the knowledge that makes our mind resilient and strong. As we do that over time, we build the 10 capitals of life, that helps us and be enlightened. And ultimately, you see that we learn to spiritualize our professional life and professionalize our spiritual life. When I mean spiritualize our professional life, what I mean is that every facet of our professional life, we embed that spiritual value of respect, kindness, gracefulness, willing to help, spiritualizing our professional life. And professionalizing our spiritual life is that we professionalize our pursuit of that divinity. That means we wake up very early in the morning, we do our meditation, we do our introspection, do a little bit of writing, then you go to work, you think in a positive way, you come back home, you rest, you be with the family, you think in a positive way. That's what I mean by professionalizing your spiritual life. That means whatever you do spiritually, you professionalize it. I mean, systematize it in your day to day. So we saw this in that formidable age, in that the formative age between 20 to 40, right? So if you have sons or children or yourself in that age, you should learn meditation. You should learn that the ICRMS, introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation and service. And I'll tell you why that is really important. So I covered this the last time. I want to cover now what happens in the maturity stage, particularly people in the 40 to 65 years old. So the first period between 25 to 40, okay, you got your job, you finish your university degree, you get your job, you're working really hard, you're trying to move from an executive to a senior position, mid-level position, right? So I told you what you need to do, professionalizing spiritual life and spiritualizing professional life. But what happens in the 40 to 65 age? This is what I call the maturity age, right? A few things. So you still have to bring with you that spiritualizing professional life and professionalizing spiritual life. Most people are still working in that age. Maybe some will retire earlier, but most people are working or doing some kind of profession, unless you're a householder. That's also a job, right? You're looking after the family, so that's also, I consider, as a very important duty of people. Sometimes it could be a house husband or a wife who looks after the home and the children. So when we bring that lens of spiritualizing professional life and professionalizing spiritual life, you see that something very interesting happens, that our family life, which we have, becomes more and more harmonious. Our understanding and the dynamics between husband, wife, children become more harmonious, more forgiving, and more tolerant. You see, they're willing to, teach one another and so on. So we see that our family life becomes really good, right? So, and, our children will be divine as best as how we think in a divine way. If our mind is not divine, if our mind is not graceful, it impacts the children. If we are selfish, our children end up becoming selfish. If we are always cursing other people, our children will do the same thing. So if we spiritualize our way of life, right, we see that, and if I spiritualize our family life, you see that the children that come out from the marriage or the family will also be spiritualized. The other aspect of this is that that's one family aspect. But also remember, this is the period you are now gaining flight in your professional life. So if you stay in a company, you probably have been promoted, or you're moving to a different company, different job, better job, higher level job. So your income levels goes up and you have that acquisition of assets. Now, someone said, well, that is material, not spiritual. Not quite true, though. Part of spirituality is to be self-sufficient, self-sustaining. So acquisition of wealth is okay, not acquisition, amassing lots of wealth. That's a problem. Acquiring wealth that is enough to look after yourself, your family, and maybe do a little bit of charity work is the best. Also, this part of spirituality is also savings. Don't spend, on things that are not necessary. I'll tell you why this is very important. So, part of spiritual life is actually generating that wealth, sustaining, managing the wealth really well, sustaining it, and then eventually passing it on to others, whether it's, temples or children. So it's that evolution is so important. So savings is a critical part of this 40 to 65 age, and I'll tell you why. Because in that age, you start seeing your income going. You want to buy a bigger car, you want to buy homes, you have girlfriends, you're spending a lot of money. So at the end of the day, sometimes we don't have anything left, especially during difficult period when you lose your job, you have commitments, it becomes really tough. So part of spiritual life is learning how to save properly, you learning how to use your resource properly, right? So in our scriptures, it used to say that dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Dharma means a resilient mind, a mind that could overcome any challenges, and a mind that is sharp, a mind that is creative, a mind that is intelligent, a mind that is able to be a stealth or not being impacted by anything. So that's dharma. Artha is that when you have that kind of mindset, you're able to create wealth, harta, right? The different types of wealth, not the 10 capitals I spoke about, right? Dharma, artha, kama. That means now you have enough resources to look after, accomplish all your desires and wish in life so that you don't regret later on, right? So you got to, uh, undertake in humanly activities in a divine way. And, living a healthy lifestyle, making sure you go for a walk or exercise every day, drinking a lot of water, looking after your body, don't abuse your body, don't take intoxicants, all these things. So as you practice meditation, your mind becomes more and more sharper, more and more focused, more and more disciplined. You have the patience, perseverance, persistence, right? And when you do that, you discover the Paranjoti, the inner light within you. So your lifestyle changes. Those who practice meditation, those who don't practice meditation, you can actually see the lifestyle. So that has an impact on your savings go up. You pay for your car, you pay for your home, you pay for your children's education. As you do that, you would have saved enough. And this is where I always tell people, when you are part of a spiritual journey, you have to make everything count. You have to be able to save for difficult periods. So this period from 40 to 65 is a very crucial period where it helps you to prepare for retirement, acquire the wealth to look after yourself and your family. This is the stage also that you have acquired some degree of wealth, some degree of knowledge, and you see that you are in a better position to contribute to society, to address the challenges of society. So there's a staging process that this Mahan's universal adapter shows you how, in that age between 40 to 65, you professional, spiritual life, and spiritualized professional life, how to live a harmonious family life, how to acquire the necessary wealth to support yourself, your family, and the greater society. You will always pursue that savings, willingness. Why do I want to spend on something which is not relevant to me? So you make informed choices. And also in terms of informed choices, not just the external wealth, but also the inner wealth that nature has blessed us with. That is our body, our mind, and our intellect. So this stage is so important, 40 to 65, of all the things that I mentioned earlier. Plus also you have to start preparing for retirement. Of course, some people retire at 55, others at 60, some 65 in some countries. Some have no retirement age, right? So you can work as long as you want. But whatever it is, one fine day you'll have to retire, right? So you have to better start preparing for retirement, because that helps you to also save, put some money for the future when you're not working, and also you have enough resources to contribute to societal development. So this is that I talk about ICRMS, which is very critical: introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation, and service. Right? Service is very important part of our lives, very important part for the maturity of our mind and our intellect to be able to reach that divinity. Right? So we see this evolution taking place. You've got to start preparing. Well, and so that you have enough resources. You're not worried about whether I can pay my medical bills or whether I can pay this and that. You have saved enough. So we see that retirement age is so important. And finally, when you did all that, you age gracefully. You always have that sandosa nila. You always have that bright, glowing, personality. Call it the winsome personality. So you age gracefully, which is wonderful. As you grow older, all your muscles will start aching, your bones will start aching, your skin, which used to be fantastic, now it's all shriveling. So, but your mind is still steady and strong and anchored on that planetary reality. It's not so the mind is not affected by all the things that are impacting your external world. So we see that as we practice this meditation, as we get to the age of 40 to 45 or 65, you got to do a few things. As I mentioned here, preparing for retirement, saving money, making sure you're healthy, all those things. And that helps us to become gracefully age. And also now you have more time to meditate, explore the great theories and philosophies, become more enlightened, and ultimately become the Mahan, or become the Buddha. So this is what I want to stop with, it, which is to inform you that meditation doesn't mean you run away from life. Meditation actually helps you to engage, deepen, broaden, our mindset to be able to live a happy, prosperous, and also, most importantly, an enlightened and spiritual life. So this is what I learned from Mahan, this roadmap of life, the things that we have to do, the things that we have to initiate, and there are things that happens naturally. So this is the wonderful part of this great Mahan's teachings, where it gives you a universal adapter, and that universal adapter, the spiritual compass, adapts with you as you age, right? And that helps us to have a greater direction. With that, Sandosham,